Today's guest is Joe Saul-Sehy from the Stacking Benjamins podcast to talk about money and much more. And contrary to what some people believe, you will learn something today. Welcome to Richer Soul, Life Beyond Money, and the Last Baby Step. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? What is it like to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures. Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. I help people live the life of their dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. You can see how on richersoul.com by looking under the coaching call tab to hear actual coaching sessions. If you've not listened to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. It's simpler than you can imagine. You can also find all the show notes for this episode on the website. I've started to send out a monthly email, and you can sign up while you're there. In the short monthly email, I'll share the best articles of the month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and also share a little bit of wisdom I learned this month. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week at Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. I want to talk a little bit about procrastination and getting things done. One of the habits I've learned with procrastination is to do the hard things first and do them in the first thing in the morning. So the things that you dread doing, the things you don't want to do but have to do, if you put them at the top of your list and just accomplish them first thing in the day, what happens is you've already climbed your mountain for that day. You don't have this thing weighing on your mind all day long and causing you dread. And once you're done, you're free to do the things that you enjoy and just go have fun. So a short story before we get started. There was a very religious man who once got caught in rising floodwaters. He climbed onto the roof of his house and trusted God to rescue him. A neighbor came by in a canoe and said, "The waters will soon be above your house. Hop in and we'll paddle to safety." "No thanks," the man replied. "I've prayed to God and I'm sure he will save me." A short time later, the police came by in a boat. "The waters will soon be over your house. Hop in and we'll take you to safety." "No thanks," replied the religious man. "I've prayed to God, and I'm sure he will save me." A little time later, a rescue helicopter came, and it let down a rope ladder. The waters were already close to the roof line, and they said, "Climb the ladder, and we'll fly you to safety." "No thanks," replied the religious man. "I've prayed to God, and I'm sure he'll save me." So as you can imagine, the floodwaters continued to rise, and soon they went above the roof, and the man drowned. When he arrived in heaven, he demanded an audience with God. Ushered into God's room, he said, "Lord, why am I here in heaven? I prayed to you to save me. I trusted you to save me from that flood." God said, "Yes, you did, my child. And I sent you a canoe, a boat, and a helicopter, but you never got in." As we reflect on that, just think about it. How many opportunities are handed to you and we just don't take? I think there's a quote that I once heard, and it's, the reason a lot of people can't find opportunity is because opportunity usually shows up disguised as hard work. And a lot of us just don't want to do the hard work. That's the reality. Climbing that mountain is hard work, and you just got to embrace the struggle. Let's meet today's guest. It's Joe Saul-Sehy He's the creator and co-host of the award-winning Stacking Benjamins podcast, a show with the goal of introducing new people to the world of personal finance. Prior to Stacking Benjamins, Joe was a financial planner for 16 years and a media spokesman for American Express and Ameriprise. I'm really excited to have Joel Saul-Sehy on the show. Let's meet him.
Welcome to Richer Soul, Joe Saul-Sehy. It's great to have you join us today.
Am I really here, Rocky? I feel like if I'm here, I've made it. This is it. The top of the mountain.
More like my basement.
Well, it's better your basement than my basement. I'm usually hanging out there. Well, not even mine, my mom's basement. So I'm very used to this.
Oh, there you go. We have a nice basement. I have picture windows in my basement, so I can see out to the wood. It's a nice basement office.
I like that much better. Mom's basement, where we record, just as those little basements along the ceiling line, just so you know if there's a fire, I have an escape hatch. That's about it.
Oh, no, we got a full patio sliding door. You can just go sit outside and enjoy life.
Well, we got to do that far more often.
That we do. So we always start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, it's different than, probably different than most people in finance, but probably like most people in general, we didn't talk about money at all. We talked about having a hard work ethic. My dad was one of the few people at General Motors who went from scrubbing floors and janitorial services all the way up to being an assistant plant manager of a facility. He's also one of the few people to hold his job that didn't have a college degree. So he always taught me a lot about working hard, about being a good Indian. Everybody wants to be the chief, but it's important to be a good Indian and to be the person your boss can rely on. So my dad taught me a lot about working with others, but when it came to money was forbidden, Rocky, in our house. You didn't talk about it. When my parents would have a money discussion, we would get shooed out of the room. If we'd ask questions about money, the answer was, that's none of your business, that's our business. We never, ever, ever talked about money. In school, we had a cool economics teacher where we talked about money in theory, but it was more around, we had a stock picking competition. And it was just enough that I got this little bit of a thirst. What really gave me a thirst was I'd see these people on television in the morning. They always seemed to have the cool ideas about how to save money at the grocery store, or how to turn off lights when you leave the room to save a nickel every time that you had your energy bill. And I always thought these people were magicians. I remember being fascinated with money that way from people outside my family, but family-wise, mine was this big black hole of nothing.
Unfortunately, that's not unusual.
Yeah.
It seems to happen more often than it does. So what have you done differently then with your kids to teach them about money?
I started very young. I felt like when my kids, so I have twins who are now 22, when my kids were young, I was on television a lot in Metro Detroit talking about teaching your kids about money. And it was funny because at first I was doing nothing. And then I thought, I'm such a hypocrite. I'm telling other people how to teach their kids about money and I'm not doing anything. But I think I did okay. I ended up instituting allowances at a very early age. And my idea of an allowance is more than what a lot of people thought they should give kids as an allowance. Because my basic philosophy is, I need to do the opposite that I had happen to me. I went to college, screwed up my credit within about 90 days. I was given an American Express card. I couldn't pay the bill. I was going to a military college. I didn't want any of that stuff to happen. And I realized that I needed to be the person that did a little more. And I think as parents, we don't want to see our kids mess up, so we don't trust them with any money. I wanted, at a very young age, them to get used to making small mistakes so they didn't make the big mistakes that I made. So starting at age 6, my kids got a weekly allowance that equaled their age. A lot of people might be screaming at their listening device right now going, what does a 6-year-old need with $6 a week? The point is nothing. I wanted them to have that money so that, number one, they'd have to make decisions about money starting early. So we'd go to Target, let's say, and my daughter would go buy some crazy toy that I knew was going to end up in a corner and not played with or broken, or it was just a cheap piece of junk that wasn't worth the money. And before that, I would have told her not to do that. Instead, I'd let her make that mistake. I wouldn't say a word about it. And then about a week later, I'd follow up with my Dr. Phil impression of, so how's that working out for you? It was a series of these small mistakes that made me today able to feel like I really trust my kids with big money decisions. I also started giving them books to read from other people. For my son, he really was a big fan of Ramit Sethi. Ramit Sethi's I'll Teach You to Be Rich is written with a lot of testosterone. And my daughter really didn't like it, but my son definitely did. My daughter likes Aaron Lowry's book, by the way, last year, like Broke Millennial book. Both of them like Scott Trench's book. My son really likes Broke Millennial too. So I've tried to give them a lot of different points of view on things to read. We try to talk about money. Cheryl and I have a weekly meeting where we talk about money, and we've had the kids in on that meeting so they kind of see how mom and dad are doing and how we pay bills and how we talk to each other about money. So in a lot of ways, the opposite. I don't want to worry my kids about money. I don't want them to feel like, oh no, we're not going to be able to pay the bills so they can't sleep at night. I don't know that kids can handle that. But as long as we're having a meeting about, no, when you turn the light on in the bathroom, that costs us money. The earlier I could get them involved with that type of stuff, and the earlier I could have them screw up with little amounts of money, the better I felt about them today.
That sounds like an extremely similar journey to mine. We actually did the same thing. We did allowance equal to age, and then we also had them split up buckets. So I started them to force savings right from the beginning, and also a charity bucket so that they learn to spend, save, and give. So far, it's worked out well. My kids are still teenagers. We'll see what the end result is in a few years, but they don't spend a lot of money, and they seem to value money for what it is. And so they make good choices with regards to what's brand-wise or popular. They're thrifty in their spending, for the most part.
I had the honor of talking to your daughter at FinCon, and holy cow, man, for a girl who's in high school, just a young woman who's in high school, just what a great financial head on her shoulders she already has. That's a great testament to what you've done.
Thank you. That was an honor to have her on your podcast, and she really enjoyed that. And that's one of the things we try and do, is to take our kids out into the world and let them see what it's really like. And it's worked out well.
I'm laughing because you'll appreciate this with your outlook. A client of mine, when I was a financial planner, gave his kids an allowance, and then he withheld taxes. And the taxes were actually ended up being the forced savings bucket. He put it in long-term savings for them. But he called it taxation so that his kids would learn at an early age not to trust the man.
It's probably a good idea to add taxation and to also add interest. Like, hey, if you want to borrow $1 at the store, sure, you can borrow $1, but you owe me $2 when we get home.
Yeah.
So I think you can ramp it up quite a bit if you want to and get quite creative. And I think all of those conversations start to create free entertainment in the household as well.
Right. I don't agree with Susie Orman on a lot of what she says. In fact, I think that most of our big gurus out there have a few things they do really well and other places where they maybe go astray. But one thing I love about Susie Orman's first book is that healthy respect for a dollar. And I think that the quicker that kids learn the healthy, and even adults learn the healthy respect for cash. I like even her message about taking your bills out and putting them in order and making them flat instead of wadded up. Like having respect for the fact that it took you effort and it took you time in your life to make this money, to get it into your wallet, to respect it, and then not carelessly hand it over to somebody else is one of the quickest things that I wanted to teach my kids.
And so we're in the midst of looking at college, and I am amazed at how clueless kids and parents are to an expense that is quite frankly massive. I mean, some of these colleges, when you add it up, anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000 over 4 years, and it seems people are just blindly accepting of going into massive debt right at the beginning and kind of screwing their kids over. And it's just shocking that there is this lack of respect or lack of understanding of money altogether.
We have a family member who I won't disclose their name, and hopefully they're not going to listen to this. Well, even if they do, I'd say this to their face. We were having a discussion. His two sons, one is a film appreciation major, and the other one, I don't remember, but it's a similar degree, and they keep going to school, and they're in their 40s now. And it just seems like they're going to be in school forever and they're never going to make any money. And dad continues to pay for it. And we were at dinner with him recently, and I just asked the question. I'm like, so why do you keep paying for his college? Because the dad was rolling his eyes. And he said, my job as a parent is to support my kids. And now I didn't say this to his face, but I certainly think it. I don't think that is his job. At least it's not my job. It might be his job. It's not my job. My feeling is it's my job to educate my kids. It's not my job to support my kids when I think they're going in a way that's going to be detrimental to their health. And I'm certainly not going to want them to take me down along with them. So I think as a parent, it's important to be somebody that helps their kids along that route. I'm thinking of my son. My son was choosing between the University of Texas and Carnegie Mellon engineering programs. And both of them, as you know, have first-class engineering programs and great stuff that you can do at either one of those universities. And my son was torn between the two of them. And I said, why do you want to go to Carnegie Mellon? And he said, well, it's really nice. Pittsburgh's a cool city. And he said a few other things that were pretty inconsequential. And as we talked through it, I said, Nick, look at the price tag on these two schools. University of Texas, in-state public school. Carnegie Mellon, private, prestigious college in Pittsburgh, 3 times the cost per year of the University of Texas. And if you can't say why one of them is more important to you than the other, why would you not go to the less expensive one, you know? And he agreed. And he absolutely agreed. And he ended up having a great, of course, you know, the University of Texas isn't a slouch university. And he ended up with a great degree in engineering and now works for Microsoft as an engineer for them after graduation. So great school, great degree, got out of there with a lot less money just because my job as a parent was to show him the price tag involved in that decision and make it real for him even at age 18. And I think that certainly helped him toward where he is today.
And those are exactly the conversations we're having in our household. And I have a saying, I think a lot of parents say, I want to raise great kids. And I think that's the wrong thing. You want to raise great adults.
Right.
And it's a slightly different word. It kind of goes back to the story you're telling about your family member. They're constantly being kids. They're not turning into adults who are taking responsibility and going out and living a great life of their own.
Yeah, your way helps them in the future, Rocky, I think. I think I don't want to look at them today. I want to look at who are they going to be when I'm not around, right? OG, my co-host on our podcast, said one day that when he goes to parties, his kids, I think, are 10 and 8. And his goal at any party where his kids are there, he tells his kids before they get out of the car, I want you to make sure that you make me look good as your parent. that I'm not that parent that all my friends are looking at going, these kids must get away with murder. They must be horrible. And I think about that. He was, of course, joking about that, but he was joking about it in a way that I want my kids, when I'm not around, to act in a way that makes them look good for themselves, for their family, and be respected and respectable.
And I concur with you. And that's exactly what I expect of my kids as well. And you have to model that, and you have to expect that of them, and then give them the freedom and the ability to go do that. And that's how you achieve that kind of success. So you spent a lot of time as a financial advisor. And I have to tell you, I struggle with financial advisors, and mainly because when I go to them, they tell me that they're going to do all of this. But at the end of the day, all they usually end up doing is focusing on a very small portion of my money, or trying to sell me all kinds of stuff. From an insider's viewpoint, can you help me or the audience get a better understanding of this industry?
I think the important lesson there from your experience is that it's very easy to call yourself a financial advisor. And I think that the wrong lesson to take from that is that I don't need smart people in my corner who are my advisors, which, by the way, is, if somebody had experience like yours, is what a lot of people, that's the lesson a lot of people get is, you know what? I don't need that advisor in my corner. My clients at the end of my career were some incredibly smart people. I worked with a gentleman who at the time was the head of the minivan platform at Chrysler. I worked with a woman who negotiated with the IRS on behalf of Chrysler. So they would always define the gray area. And it was funny. She would tell me that she would call the person at the IRS who she interfaced with every day. And she'd say, hey, just want to let you know we're suing you. Or the IRS would call her and say, hey, just want to let you know we're suing you. And they were in court against each other all the time, but they were buddies. It was just trying to figure out the gray areas of the tax code and where they could step and where they couldn't step. So I worked with these people that were incredibly smart, that could easily do my job on their own. But the reason they had me was because my job was to be their agent who looked at the world differently than they looked at it, who brought my skill with money onto their assets so that I didn't own them, but I was able to make sure that they weren't stepping in bad spots while they could go about doing the thing that they were great at. So you can spend all day managing your money and then spend part of your time making money. In the case of these people, they were great at making money and wanted to spend some time managing their money, but they wanted good help in their corner doing it. I think you have to set the bar high when it comes to any advice, not just financial advisor, but if you think about a rock star or a sports star that has an agent, you think about what that agent does and how that agent's job is to really be on their team, and they keep their job if they are, they get fired if they don't, then I want to look for that agent that really is somebody who's in my corner. And the bad news is there's so many financial advisors who aren't what I just described. That it can be difficult to find the ones that you really want, which is why I think a lot of people, I think they hunt the wrong way. I think they look for big name brand companies that are advertising on TV. They look for people that maybe they see their signs all over the community. The thing I found was that some of the most successful advisors, most of the great advisors actually, I'll take that back. Most of the great advisors I knew did little to no advertising at all. They had plenty of clients. They really didn't care about getting a lot of new clients. When they did get new clients, they got them from their current clients who were incredibly smart people that would refer them because they did a great job. So, which makes it difficult to find the good ones. The easy ones are all over the place. You go to your Greasy Spoon restaurant for breakfast, Rocky, and they're on the thing that you're eating on, the little paper, the little piece of paper that your plate set on down at the Waffle House. The bad advisor is going to be on that. And I'm not ripping people that market that way, by the way. If you market that way, that's fine, and you might be great at your job. I'm just saying that people often go to the people that market a lot, and marketing means you need more clients. Great advisors don't have to look that hard.
And I agree with you. I think the struggle comes out, especially when people are younger, is they might not be hanging out with friends who are that successful, and they may not have the connection to those people. And then the second part of that is, even if you have the connections, you may not be able to afford the advisor, in the sense that the advisor may also not take you on because you don't have enough assets for them to make money off of.
I have a problem, especially with younger people listening, with the idea of advisors that only work with people with X number of assets. I feel like financial planning is something that's needed more by people starting out than people that already have a gajillion dollars, to put it technically. But yet the financial planning industry, but by the way they charge fees, is geared toward the people that probably need financial planning the least, right? The people that actually need the milestones and need the tax planning and need to know, should I put this money in a 529 plan or in my Roth IRA, are not the people that these asset managers are going after. So I think there's a big difference between a financial planner and an asset manager. And if you're working with somebody who's basing their advice and their fees on just your level of assets, and I know some great advisors that do that, I think you might not be getting the full picture, especially if you're just starting out. If you're just starting out, I want somebody who's going to charge me X amount of money for Y amount of time, and give me something that is all 6 areas of financial planning, not just asset management. I think too many financial advisors focus on asset management because it's the sexy area, right? It's the part that everybody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about some of the more important parts, which are probably getting your budget in order at first, making sure you have a great debt strategy instead of just having debt, basically putting together your cash flow statement so it makes sense. I think some advisors think that's beneath them. And then the second thing is your risk management strategy. And notice I didn't say buying insurance, because insurance is just one way to manage risk. I think it's better if you think in terms of a wider risk management strategy and attack from that point down. I think good financial advisors can add a lot of value there. Way too few people focus on that.
In all our episodes, I don't think we've really talked about some of the other areas besides just the asset management that you kind of need financial help. And that is with the budgeting, with the risk management, And even also, I think an area that comes in there, and I don't think a lot of financial planners maybe really talk about it, but how to increase your income as well, and how to get involved in your non-standard assets. So how many financial advisors are going to look at you and say, I think you should go buy a rental home? Does that ever occur?
It does, but it all depends on how the advisor's paid. If an advisor is paid to manage money in-house, he or she is not going to tell you to go buy this rental house over there. But if the advisor doesn't get paid at all to manage assets, well, then certainly they're going to look at the wider field of assets and say, you know what, a rental property might be great for you. Here's the upside, here's the downside of rental property. I think these two things fit for you. I worry about this piece for you. Here's where it can really harm you. Here's where it can be the ace up your sleeve. Here are a couple of people I can point you to that can help you in that area, and they refer you to good people. I think that's what a great coach does. Somebody who manages assets in-house is usually going to tell you that the rental house sucks and that you should probably have more money with me.
So we were talking financial advisors, and then you just said coach. I'm wondering, is there a certain title for these people? Like if someone were to go looking for someone who's going to look at them holistically, what do they look for? What do you put into Google?
I look for fee-only financial planner, and when I get them, I ask the direct question, how are you paid? And I think if you're somebody who is looking at the whole range of somebody's financial plan, I want to ask the question, are you paid also based on a percentage of assets? Are you going to ask me to manage money for you? And for some people, that's great. And there's some financial planners I know who are fantastic at that, and there are people that need that service. But if you're somebody who wants this more holistic thing that you and I are talking about, then I want somebody who's charging me a fee for the amount of time that they spend with me, forget about the assets, and I want to know the full spectrum. Where can I go myself? I'll tell you what the problem is with this, though, Rocky. This all sounds really good, right? When I was a financial planner, when I had that type of relationship with a client where I said, but because of my practice, you could do one of two things. You could either have me manage it, or I would leave you to manage it. And by the way, for the type of financial planner I got paid more if you had me do it, but I didn't care because I wasn't into the game of forcing somebody to do something that they didn't want to do so that I would get paid more. It ended up being a pain in the ass. So I preferred to have a client that wanted to do it themselves. I would charge them a fee for time. I would tell them, yeah, go do this thing over here, do whatever. And I'd have them go take care of it themselves. And guess what my biggest frustration was with those types of clients?
They won't pay you.
No, not at all. They paid me fine. Crap wouldn't get done.
Oh.
If I handled it, if they paid me to handle it and take care of it, the money got rolled over to the right place. The insurances got put in place. The budget was tight. The bank account was the way it was. The automation for paying off their debt was the way it was. If they paid me the money to do it, the stuff got done. When I had clients that said, no, I don't want any of that. I want you to just tell me and I'll take care of it. I would call them 2 weeks later and stuff wasn't done. And I would tell them, listen, you're wasting your money. And then 3 weeks later, I'd call them again. Stuff still wasn't done. I'd say, you know what? Do you agree with all the stuff that we talked about? Because it's appearing to me like you don't agree with what we're talking about. Oh, no, I agree with all of it. Yeah, I got to take care of it. I've been busy. And I would always calculate because I always felt like numbers were better motivation than me pounding on my chest or on their chest. I'd say, okay, so far, because you haven't done anything, you've lost $875 because you haven't taken it. How much money do we need to lose before you actually do that? That's what people paid me to do. And yet, I would call them 2 weeks later, and it still wasn't done. Very frustrating. So I think half the game, too, is know yourself, right? Stop tricking yourself and saying you're going to do it. If you're somebody who's not going to do it, well, then have an advisor and say, you know what, please do this for me. The one thing I don't like, and what goes too far there, hire an advisor to take care of those things for you. Do not expect the advisor to care more about your money than you do. And I've heard some people put some stank on that statement, going, well, your advisors don't care about your money as much as you do, so you shouldn't have it about. No advisor's ever going to care about your money as much as you do. But you should care more about your money, and you should have somebody who's very smart that's going to help direct you to do it. But if they care more about your money than you do, Houston, you've got a problem. You should always care about your money more than anybody else.
And that's very true. And I say the same thing. You should care more about your money, and you've got to take action. And so this is the question, and it sounds like you struggled with it as well. How do you get people to take action?
That was the biggest frustration. And I'll tell you that putting numbers in front of people's faces generally was what it took. There were some people, though, I just couldn't move, and I didn't get it. I had one guy who came into my office one time, and our first meeting, and with most financial planners, the first meeting's free. And my goal was to show people as much value as possible for free. So even if they left and didn't hire me, my strategy was that they would tell their friends it was a great use of time, and they'd refer other people to come in and meet me. And by the way, that worked a lot. If people didn't hire me, they would send their friends. And so I had this guy, his name was Philip. It's funny, Rocky, this was almost 20 years ago, and I remember this dude's name. Philip comes into my office, and Philip's messing up a bunch of junk. He's got this credit card debt that's all over the place. He brought in his tax return. He's got a problem there. He has a couple of mutual funds that have really high fees that he can easily change over to cheaper mutual funds in a similar category and save money. And I did all of this work for him for free. And I told him that the fee to me for year number one was going to be $800. And the work I'd done for him was $3,200. And by the way, and the way I presented it was, I said, this is going to be $800. I've saved you $3,200 today. And I haven't even dug in. Like, all I did was the stuff that you happen to grab and bring into me. I just looked at that and I found $3,200. I know, just from my experience doing this, that there's probably 3 or 4 times that much money that you've got slipping through the cracks that we can find too. So I'm pretty excited because I think Phil and I are going to get along great. Phil looks at me and goes, yeah, well, this has been great, but I can't see paying that kind of money. Like, excuse me? What? $800 for $3,200. No, $800, man, that just seems like a lot of money. So let me get this straight. It was the end of the evening, and this is horrible to admit, but I was very tired and I had had enough. I said, so Phil, if I threw $3,200 on the ground, would you pick it up? And he goes, so what are you talking about? So if I threw $3,200 on the ground, would you pick it up? He said, well, yeah, I'd pick it up. I said, let's say that you don't have any arms. He's like, well, what are you talking about? Let's say you have no arms. Would you pay me $800 to pick up your $3,200? Why? Yeah, absolutely I would. Phil, that's what the hell I'm talking about here. It's exactly what I'm talking about. And by then, I think I made him angry, and that was the end of that meeting. But sometimes from an advisory standpoint, Rocky, you can bring people to water, you can show them, you can hold up the mirror, you can do all the motivational tricks you want. I don't know if it's being cheap. I don't know if it's not trusting. I don't know.
I'm still looking for that answer too. Because to me, at the end of the day, all of this stuff is pretty simple. Money is relatively simple. And yet it's just so hard to do the simple as humans.
Right.
And that's what I find. It's just the principles are easy, but taking action seems to be hard. And most of it isn't even that hard to do. And I guess that's just life. So you spent 16 years in the business. Why did you leave?
I had a mentor named Chris. I owned my own company, but I was a franchise in a big company, Ameriprise. Before that, I was with American Express. American Express spun off Ameriprise. So I owned my own business, but Chris was the guy who worked for Ameriprise corporate and kind of oversaw the franchisee. So it's like I owned a McDonald's, and he was the guy from corporate that made sure that I wasn't out there saying 12% return guaranteed or doing crazy stuff like that. So Chris one day wrote us a letter that said he was leaving, wrote all of us in the area a letter. And the letter said, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know that I'm in my 30s and I've already spent close to 15 years doing this. And I don't know what I really want, but I know this isn't it. And I know that unless I get a second shot at life, I got to make the change now to figure out what I do want. I'm working 14-hour days, and I don't even have time to think about what I want. So in his letter, he said he'd saved up enough money that he could go and try to figure it out. And he actually used this phrase. He said, I have other mountains that I want to climb. And what's funny is that he went and climbed Mount Everest twice. So he clearly had other mountains to climb. He's climbed almost all of the major mountains in the world. And today he's an adventure guide and absolutely loves what he's doing there. In fact, it's weird. I hadn't heard from him in a long time. I heard from him literally 2 hours ago for the first time in probably over a year, which was really cool. But Chris not only affected me, but affected a lot of people around me. I was having a milestone birthday. I was turning 40. And I looked at my practice. I had a great practice. I was managing $65 million, which isn't a huge amount of money, but isn't tiny either. It's a pretty mid-sized practice. I was doing a lot of public relations work for American Express and for Ameriprise. I was one of 12 advisors in the nation that was allowed to speak on behalf of the company before we went through compliance, which is a whole different podcast to talk about how significant that is, that I got to talk first without having to go through a lawyer. But I was doing all this cool stuff, but I knew at the end of the day that it wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I sold my business. I went back to school to become a high school teacher and a track coach because I really like teaching people. And my wife and I met each other as junior high track coaches, and I really love teaching kids how to run. And I thought that was what I wanted to do. And I got about a year into it, Rocky, and I was bored silly. So during that first year, in shorts and a T-shirt, I was doing a bunch of writing for friends of mine because I'd done all this PR stuff. So my friends in PR, my friends that were financial advisors said, hey, can you write my client newsletter? Sure. So I'd write their newsletter. Could you write my scripts for my TV appearance? Absolutely. I'd write their full screens up. I'd write the outline of what they needed to talk about when they went on TV. So I started doing all this copywriting work, and I was loving it. And that eventually became the way that I decided to teach people, which became the Stacking Benjamin Show. So, and now I feel completely differently. I feel like I also had different mountains to climb. It wasn't climbing Everest, but it was certainly doing something a little different than what I was doing before. I love finance, in the trenches, financial planning. It was good. I still love my clients. I still miss them, but I don't miss that grind of running that type of a business.
And so mountains are our theme. You know, climbing your mountain is important. It's that journey and enjoying it. And every so often taking time as you're climbing that mountain to turn around and look at the view of where you've come. I find a lot of people struggle. Maybe they climb halfway up a mountain. They thought they were going up the right mountain, but they weren't sure. I mean, in that moment of walking away from your business, I've got to believe there was a ton of fear. I mean, you're giving up this massive job to go be a high school track coach. Right. You don't just, hey, this is what I'm doing and I feel great about it.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind in that massive shift?
Well, just like any self-respecting financial planner, there was a lot of planning that went in there first. I had to get enough money from my business, which I did, to be able to support any type of transition. And I did very well there. I was lucky that my spouse loves what she does and she was still working. So we did the math there that we were going to be able to be okay and leave our assets alone and working, which was important, right? That I wasn't going to have to touch our assets. We could buckle down for a little while on our budget and just live off of one income. So that happened. And yeah, it was a massive amount of planning. And even still, I messed up a ton. The biggest oh no, I remember sitting in this class and I had a partner named Whitney, who was just brilliant, by the way. But Whitney had this class ring, and Whitney's high school class ring said 2008 on it. And I graduated from high school in 1986. And I'm sitting here with Whitney as my partner, and I'm looking around, and there's all of these wonderful 22-year-olds, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But I still really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed being around young people. And by the way, you know, Rocky, guys like you and I, by the way, we're the exception. Most of the people we surround ourselves with today, or a lot of the blogging community and podcasting community, are people in their 20s. And I love the youth movement there. It's invigorating and exciting. But I did think, I'm like, man, I'm in the wrong place. That was my first oh no. And then, but my biggest oh no was I'm taking these classes, and I had these wonderful professors that were teaching me that all I was going to do was fight administration. I wasn't going to get to teach. I was going to be fighting administration. And then I thought, why the hell did I sell my practice to go fight with people? Like people that are supposedly protecting students and making them stronger. Instead, to actually teach people, I was going to have to fight for everything. And I remember one professor telling me that if there was a discipline problem, I couldn't send them to the office. I had to try to handle it in the classroom because the office was never going to take care of it the way that it should be taken care of. The office was going to mess it up. And by the way, in terms of taking care of it in my classroom, you have no teeth. You have absolutely nothing you can really do. All you can do is have a very stern voice and pretend like you mean it, because the emperor has no clothes. If I say anything, every kid has their cell phone camera out videotaping me. And if I actually come down on a kid at all and try to have any discipline in my classroom, the parents largely against you. My cousin's an educator and said that it's pretty amazing. When he started as an educator, parents were on the team of the educator, said, hey, help me take care of my kid. I'm the parent, you're the teacher. And now parents come in and say, you've got no proof. I remember my cousin telling me he's had to tell more than one parent, this isn't a court of law. Like, I don't need proof. It's not you against me. He feels like sometimes parents want you to do the parenting, and at the same time, they want to hold you accountable because their kid isn't parented well.
These same things come across in everything. They don't want to take care of their money. They don't want to take care of their kids. They don't want to take care of their life. I mean, like, how did we get? This is what I struggle with, and that's what the whole podcast is like. Take control of all the different parts of your life. It's really not that hard, and you can have an amazing life.
And that was what was fun. That's what's fun about what you and I do now. What I really love about what we do now is that I get to comment about what I think is right or wrong. I don't have a financial axe to grind in terms of this product or that product. I don't have any of that anymore. Instead, I get to tell you what I think about your money. And if you take my advice, great. If you do nothing with it, that's fine. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I won't feel hurt because I'm just an entertainer now talking about how money works. And I love that role. I love the fact that you get to decide. And largely, as you know, the people that listen to these shows are the people that are like us. You know, they're people that I had a friend one time early in my career who said that I would attract clients that were like me and I would repel people who weren't like me. And I find that's true with my podcast as well. I attract listeners who like my personality. I repel people who don't. Clearly, I see that in the 1-star reviews. So I have this perfect world where every day on the microphone, I get to talk to people who largely are my kind of peeps. And I feel very lucky that there's enough people that are in our corner that, you know, we've been able to make a business out of it where a lot of people haven't.
And that's cool. And I mean, what I enjoy mostly with coaching is that literally with one session, I can show people a handful of opportunities right in front of them that literally give them 3 to 6 months of homework that they can start to dramatically change the trajectory of their life if they choose to take action and do it.
That's so cool.
It's a lot of fun doing that. And I think that's
so cool.
Power of coaching. Now, you have a coach, right? Or you've had coaches in the past. How have they helped you?
I've had 2 different types of coaches. I've gone to Coach.me, Tony Stubblebine's company. And so I'll have coaches the way that he recommends having coaches, which are that have a specific thing I want help with, hire somebody for maybe 4 to 8 weeks, and then they're gone. And their job is to help me with that section of my life. But I also have an overall coach because I'm always going 1,000 miles an hour. I'm an eternal optimist, Rocky. I constantly think everything, the sunrise is right around the corner, even when it's the darkest. And so I have noticed that I get so focused on the big, bright, beautiful tomorrow that I have significant Achilles heels that I don't pay any attention to. So I've also had a coach for a long period of time. Her name's Mary Lou. Her job is to help me protect my backside and my Achilles heels. And she specifically, I chose somebody who is not like me, who looks at the world different than me, who will point out the stuff that I'm not paying attention to and will keep hammering it home where she thinks that I'm messing up. I know she's on my team. I know she loves me, but we don't spend a lot of time on that. We spend a lot of time on here are the areas that you really want to work on this week to shore up. And basically, and it's not just that. I mean, if I spend my life focused on the things that I'm just doing poorly, I'm not going to get anywhere, right? She wants me to focus on the things that are going to have the biggest impact, help me make the biggest impact on my audience, and also be the most fulfilling for my career and what I'm trying to achieve for myself. So to find that intersection of those two places and to forget the other stuff. And a lot of times I'll get so focused on one leaf of the tree, I forget it's part of a whole forest. And she'll back me away from that leaf and say, look at the entire forest. You're totally focused on the wrong thing. And I'll go, yeah, you're right. We'll refocus. Right now, I have a book that is 80,000 words. It's way too long. I've been working on it for 10 years. But when I say working on it, it goes through stops and starts. And right now, on a weekly basis, she flogs me for not paying enough attention to that book and getting it finished, because that book represents a lot of different things. And I really got to get it done.
And I think that's where the power comes in, is being able to see your blind spots, being held accountable, and just having that hour-long conversation to take a step back and make sure you're on the right path and making the right choices. And a lot of times I think what you'll see, and it's just like you talked about with your clients, they want X, but they do Y.
Right.
It's, hey, if you truly want X, then you need to do X to get X, or just give up the dream and say, you know what, I'm going to be okay with Y, and I'm just going to go do that and enjoy it.
I think we have to be open. I think, especially in today's society, I think a lot of us, with a lot of the political conversations that we have, we feel this need to be right. I'm going to badly quote poker player Annie Duke, who said this once. She said, if we change that feeling every day of I want to be right, because, we see these arguments on Facebook, we see them everywhere, where people go, no, you're wrong, I'm right, this is my point of view, this is exactly the way it is. Studies have shown that if we want to be right, if new facts come into the picture that contradict us and what we think is right, these determined beliefs that we have, those facts hit those predetermined beliefs and bounce off. A lot of the time we don't even hear them, believe it or not. It's amazing. We'll just disregard it immediately. Other times, and this gets worse the smarter that we are, as our intelligence grows, we're great PR people for ourselves. We can tell ourselves that these new facts mean nothing. Instead, these other facts are the important ones. I want to focus on the fact A and B instead of C and D, because I have to be right. And she said if we change that to wanting to be correct, if we want to be correct, it's, once again, you had mentioned earlier in the show, just a slight word change, right? But if we want to be correct, instead we open every day with, how talking to Rocky can that change my worldview? And I'm excited about it changing my worldview. And I want it to. I'm hoping that I have this conversation with Rocky where I come out of this different than before, instead of having to be right ahead of time and come out of here making sure that my point of view trumped yours. I really get excited about that. But I think that takes some guts. And certainly when I first hired my coach, I would tell her she was full of crap all the time because I wanted to be right. And now I realize that she looks at the world differently than me, and no, she's not right, and I'm not right. She's looking at a whole different point of view than I am, and I certainly need to take that into account if I want to be correct.
We all look at life through a certain lens, and that's just one lens, and you can look at a situation and there's 100 different lenses and 100 different viewpoints, but we're all stuck in ours. I have a Bible quote that I kind of like to live by. It's, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. But I've added on to that, which is accept the sharpening. Because as you said, we all want to sharpen the other person, right? Oh, I'm going to teach him. I'm going to sharpen him. Right. But no, accept the sharpening. And in order to be sharpened, there's going to be grinding and sparks and heat. And we're going to get upset. And we're not going to be happy sometimes. But when you accept that, you sharpen yourself and you become so much better. I don't know why we're not taught that. Because you mentioned in schools, it seems we're going the opposite way. When I grew up, it was the same way. When you went to school, the parent was with the teacher, and the parent would come in and go, sharpen my kid. You haven't sharpened enough, grind him a little bit more. Now it's the opposite attitude. And we've changed culturally, and that's a shame, because you need to be sharpened. You've got to accept the sharpening. So I don't know what to do about that.
I don't either. And I think it's an individual by individual basis. And all that guys like you and I can say, Rocky, is once you agree to that, once you give yourself over to that, it's pretty exciting, because all of a sudden you realize it's that quote, right? The more I know, the less I know. The more I know, the more I realize that I don't know anything. And it becomes a very exciting world to live in when I realize that I've got so much unexplored territory. It makes me more frustrated than to watch that Facebook argument of people that are in the same boat I am, insisting they know everything about this particular issue. But so be it.
Well, it's tough. You and I also share another thing, which is ADD. How does it manifest in your life?
It's these wide-ranging conversations that I have with people like you. It is difficult for me at first to focus on individual tasks. I find myself pulled. I'll be in the middle of a task, and I'll think of the 5 other tasks that aren't being done. So I have a big problem with staying on point. Once I get on point, much like a lot of people with ADD, I'm hard to get off that point. So even if I have an appointment, it'll be difficult to get me off that point to the next appointment. In fact, a problem I have a lot in my life is that I get so enthralled with the thing that I'm doing now, I don't want to go to the next thing. And then I get to the next thing and I don't want to leave that. And then I get to the next one, I don't want to leave. And so I have this problem. I have a problem staying on point if I'm not completely in it. And once I am completely in it, I have a problem stopping and moving on to the next necessary task. So I've only... When my kids were diagnosed with ADD, I went in and I was officially diagnosed. Everybody around me knew I had ADD before I was diagnosed, so it was no surprise. Like my kids, I tried medication. And you know what? Medication works great for me, but I generally choose not to take medication because now I work in a very creative business. And I found that for me, medication makes me stay on point and stay on task and I get stuff done, but I'm not creative at all. My creativity I don't know what happens. And maybe it's psychosomatic. I'm not a doctor, but my creativity just goes away. And we have a show that is very much based on creativity and humor. I'm not funny anymore. I'm pretty much a working great robot. So I learned to set myself up with all kinds of devices that keep me on task.
I have never been officially diagnosed. I just know that a lot of times, I'm in the middle of one thing and I leave and I go do 6 other things in the middle of that task, and it drives my kids up the wall and they're fed up with me. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm getting it all done. So, get to moving and get stuff done. So it's kind of a struggle there. In doing that. And I think that's the biggest thing, in these things all fall across a thing, whether we're talking about your money, your life, your things, it's to figure it all out and be intentional. And I think I've heard you say, begin with the end in mind. And it seems so few people actually take the time to think about the end and then investigate the end to see if that's truly what they thought it was going to be. That's where the struggle comes in, and that's what makes people unhappy. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, I totally do. That's what the financial planning business taught me more than anything, is that I had some great mentors teaching me financial planning who said, any asset allocation will get you where you want to go if you don't really want to go anywhere. But really, if you start off with what you want, it's very easy to take this wide range of 19 different asset classes and narrow it down to the few asset classes that really work. And now instead of getting freaked out about investments, now you have this manageable scope of investment options to explore and to educate yourself on instead of the whole thing. I think people get really freaked out about, I don't know about this. None of that's important. Start with where you want to go, look at what historically has gotten you there, and then just study those. And then the fear goes away. I'm a guy that has felt fear a lot too before. So not only with my ADD, but with my fear, if I start off with what do I need to achieve? What's the top of that mountain look like? And then where am I at today? What are the milestones along the road? How do I just hit the next milestone, hit the next milestone, hit the next milestone? And by the way, if I focus, Rocky, with my ADD on just the milestone, I love milestones. I don't know what it is, but if you show me the top of that mountain, I freak out. But if you tell me that I just have to save, let's say, $500 for the goal in the next 3 months, I'll find $500. It's amazing. I'm like, okay, met that milestone. Now we're on to the next. What do I have to do next? I have to do this one thing. And that gets rid of the fear. That gets rid of a lot of my ADD issue and allows me to focus because I know where I'm headed. So I totally agree. That's a great way for people like us, I think, and for most people, I think, to start.
And I think that's the struggle. Most people don't begin with the end in the mind. I know we're going through that with my kids right now. It's like, what do you want to do in your life? They've got no clue. So, they're out there just kind of wandering a bit. I think adults are like that. They get caught up in the hamster wheel of life, and they don't have the time to even think anymore about what they want. And if you don't do that and you don't take the time to determine your end, and you're just looking for tactics, your tactics are taking you down roads that are other people's roads, not yours. Right. And you end up in the wrong places. And I think that's why so many people get stuck, is they don't just kind of step back and create their life plan and think through it and kind of pressure test it and go forward and do it.
That's another thing, circling back just for a second to financial advisors. You have to have a financial advisor that's open to that too, that's open to helping you reach your plan. Not focus on what they're best at, but helping you focus on what you're best at and empowering you to get what you're best at. And I think that also takes some courage for advisors to do. I mean, think of being an advisor and being open to all these different people that have all these different goals, require different strategies. And instead of having a one-size-fits-all approach, having a one methodology fits that helps individuals go in maybe completely different directions.
That's the struggle, though, is you kind of almost have to live life to have the experience to be able to have the comfort of teaching that to someone else. Or can some people be smart enough to know early?
No, I think it's a combination. I think there's two things here. When I was an advisor, I would maybe help 15 people a year retire that year. I got to see a lot of different people reaching different types of goals, which only says one thing to me. When I first started as an advisor, I had heard the advice, don't hire new advisors, right? And I thought, of course, as a new, egotistical, young, brash advisor, I'm like, that's crazy talk. Of course you should hire new advisors. I'm wicked smart. It's awesome. Yet, I can tell you that I've helped so many people do so many different things that there's a big chance that even though I haven't lived it personally, I've seen somebody do it. And if I don't have the personal experience with somebody, I know the people that have the experience that I can point you to. That only comes with having a decent sized client base and a thriving practice where you see lots of different situations hit you over time. So I don't think the advisor has to have lived it themselves. They just have to have been in the field long enough to have been around it before.
So finding someone who can give them the advice to be able to help them help the client. And that's reasonable.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of the time, Rocky, the advice didn't come from me. Great advisors say is, I don't know, but I can find out. I think that's a powerful advisor. And I said that a lot during my career. I don't know myself, but I know who does know. And I thought that was a big reason people hired me, was because of my network of people that I did know who I trusted, who had the right answer for them. Clearly, nobody's going to know everything about everything, but there's lots of people who know people. And if I could be that guy, I was really helping my client go a long way.
That brings up an interesting question is, you built a network. I don't know how many people are intentional about building up a network and relationships so that when they need something, they've got a group of people who they can reach out to.
You know what's funny is that at the time, when I was a financial advisor, it was very intentional. And I'll tell you, it was intentional with a whole different thing in mind that people listening won't think about. I also remember needed to get new clients. So if I could be a great financial advisor and network with somebody who I thought was a great estate planning attorney, somebody who's a great tax preparer, CPA, or even several of those people, somebody who's a great real estate pro, or maybe a couple of those people. For me, those were people like me who saw lots of people also, and they would see people at times when big money events were happening and they might need an advisor. I was doing it intentionally for 2 reasons, and I'll tell you the bigger one was marketing. Because one of the biggest questions we get on our show, because both OG's a current advisor and I, being a former advisor, people would ask, well, how do I start? And my biggest thing for people that want to get into the financial planning business is you have to realize it's a marketing business at first. I know that you want to do these awesome financial planning things with your life, but you're never going to get to that point if you don't have any clients. I saw far more people fail because they couldn't get clients than because they didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
And everything in life comes down to sales. And so that's why you literally need to learn that skill, whether you want to get a job, a wife, or try and convince your kids to do what you're trying to tell them.
It's funny because so many people say they're not in sales, Rocky. So I love what you're saying. Everybody's in sales. I'm completely with you.
You are. If you want what you want in life and you're going to go ask for it, you're in sales, regardless of whether or not that's your title. That's what it's all about.
Amen, brother.
I know that you love to play board games. Just out of curiosity, what's the best board game to learn about money?
Oh, man, you asked the best. You've done so much homework on me. This is easily the most far-reaching interview I've ever done. I'll start off with, I like, and my podcast also is based on the science of play, and I base my board game addiction on the science of play, which is that I like board games not to learn about money. I like board games to build the thirst so that I go find out more. So as an example, a great game about building a business is a game called Power Grid, where you are building up a utility company, and there's several maps. The map that comes with the original game, you can buy others, has a map of the United States on one side, a map of Germany on the other, and you're competing against everybody else to get power plants, to get resources, to fuel those plants, basically to run an operation that continually brings in more money than you're spending and upgrading it enough so that you're able to beat the other players. It really is. It doesn't feel like you're playing Monopoly, but really when you get done with the game, you're like, that's kind of the same thing as Monopoly. I'm trying to build this huge system. You know, I don't learn anything. I guess my point is I don't learn a lot, Rocky, playing Power Grid about business. But when I get done, I'm very interested in the difference between fusion power, which I didn't know how the heck that worked at all, coal power, oil, microwaves, like what's that all about? Nuclear power, like how do these different systems work? And I went and looked them up because the game was so damn fun. But if I had to pick one that was good to teach a little bit about how money works, there's a fun family game called Stockpile. And Stockpile is a 45-minute family game. The part that doesn't teach you about money and stocks and bonds in real life is that everybody has one piece of inside information about a company that nobody else has. That's the unrealistic piece. If you have inside information, you're trading on that, you're going to jail. But not in this game. And then you have all of these shares and you're putting them in these different piles and you're trying to convince people that this is the pile they want to take when really you've put upside down some hidden fees because they have hidden like brokerage charges that you throw on with these shares. You learn stocks go up, you learn stocks go down, you learn what happens when stocks split, you learn what happens when a stock goes bankrupt. That's not fun. I had a stock in one game, by the way, and what's funny is it was an automotive company in the game. The automotive, and I'm from Detroit, the automotive company could not stay solvent the entire game. I immediately bought shares in this automotive company and it went bankrupt and I lost all my money. And then the stock starts taking off again, goes bankrupt again. Only time in my life I've had a stock go belly up 3 times in a single game. Other stocks will split and you'll get double the shares but the same amount of money. But then the stock would go up again and now I have double the shares and now I don't know. It's a pretty neat, short family game where it teaches you the very, very basics about money. In terms of running like an operation, running a business, which I think is a key. You talk about increasing your income. I love a game called Viticulture. Viticulture is a really fun game about operating a winery. And it's this really kind of sexy theme for some of us that like going and visiting wineries and doing the wine tastings and things. So you may have a tasting room. You're going to stomp the grapes. You're going to deliver orders. It's a really fun game about making wine.
Very interesting selection of games. Have you ever heard of Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow?
I have. I definitely have.
I just want to make sure you knew about it.
Absolutely.
We've played that with my kids, and it kind of teaches the basics of real estate, stock, and how to get out of trading time for money and get on the bigger track of creating businesses and creating cash flow for yourself.
I've heard people play that game and have hour-long conversations afterwards about the moves they made, the moves they didn't make, and that's fascinating. When you get people talking about that kind of stuff, that's pretty powerful.
Very true. So we've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything we should have talked about that we haven't yet touched on?
No, man, what didn't we touch on? I'm very excited. This has been a really fun time.
Cool. So as we wrap up, I'm going to try something new here. I usually come up with the action step for my listeners. I'm thinking, based on our conversation, could you recommend an action step for our listeners based on what's one thing they can do this week to bring about change?
The big thing from where I sit to bring around change in your life, actually, it's funny. It's one thing, Rocky, that we didn't talk about. I believe that a lot of us haven't automated money as much as we should. I think we should spend more time on the things that we're great at, and we should automate a lot of the stuff so we don't have to make decisions all the time. I think if there's a great decision that you made in the past, something that made you money, think to yourself, is there a way I can automate that? So every single time that condition comes up again, I'll catch it. Because people that I know that have lots of money, that's specifically what they've done. They've taken these actions where they catch themselves doing something crazy, and instead of going, wow, hey, I found $50, they go, how can I automate it so I get that $50 over and over and over again? I'll give you one quick example. They say that you should look at your car insurance and your homeowner's insurance maybe every other year on your birthday. Well, just to make it easy, every year, maybe not on your birthday because you're celebrating that day, but the day after your birthday, just you have a birthday, you look for 3 different quotes on your car and your homeowner's insurance. It's this thing that you do just like changing the smoke alarm. If you still have a battery-powered smoke alarm, you change those specifically when you change the clocks, right? You have a birthday, you look at your car insurance and your homeowners, and what you'll find is that even if you haven't changed, different companies focus on people in different age groups. Because of that, you'll find that you'll have a birthday that means nothing to you, but now Allstate likes you instead of State Farm, let's say. You all of a sudden, your State Farm rates went up and Allstate rates go down, and that's because you're now in somebody else's bullseye. So that's straight from a property casualty agent that I know who said you should check probably every other year. I like doing it every year because I don't know which year's the right one.
Thank you for that actionable advice. That's not what I would have come up with, so I'm glad that I asked you, because mine are probably getting stale, and it's nice to go in new directions. So if people want to find you, listen to you, learn more about you, what's the best way for them to find you and connect?
Sure. You can find me at the Stacky Benjamin Show. We're every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and different Rocky than your show, where I learn a ton whenever I listen. Just so you know what you're getting into, our goal is never to teach anything ever. Our whole mantra around the show was to try to be the car talk of personal finance. If you know car talk, you know these brothers click and clack, and you have a great time, but you don't learn much about cars. Our goal is to just be money culture and kind of envelop you in that science of play so that you're having a good time and you're hearing lots of different ways to do things. And maybe something ends up helping you out. But in the very least, you're very mindful about your money and turning it into something I think is a lot more fun to talk about than a lot of us think. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Stacking Benjamin Show. And then Monday through Friday, we have the new Money in the Morning Show, which is just 15 minutes, 2 money headlines. And we take the headline and we break it down and talk about what does this really mean for your money. And we try to keep those very short so you can have it over coffee and get on with your day.
And I encourage you to check them out, because we don't talk so much about money per se on here and the tactics, because there's so many great people who do, and go check them out. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thanks a lot, Rocky. I really appreciate it. This has been a blast.
I encourage you to check out Joe Saul-Sehy and the Stacking Benjamin Show at stackingbenjamins.com. I'm told you won't learn anything, but you will have fun. I plan on being on the show soon, and I'll let you know when the episode goes live. So, today's action step. Automate your money and life. If you do something great, automate the habit so you don't need to think about it in the future. If I look back and I think about the one thing that's created wealth in my life, it's that all my savings have been automated. I don't think about it. It just happens. Behind the scenes, that compounding curve works, and wealth just occurs. Based on what you've heard and the struggle of finding the right people to help you, I encourage you to take a look at the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a coaching session I'm offering at richardsoul.com/SWOT. It is a one-time session where we look at your life and the mountain you want to climb and make sure everything is in order. The other choice is just to keep going the way you are. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help you build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying to create something and failing. Can I help you achieve your goals? Just email me, and we can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit. Is there someone you know who could benefit from what we talked about today? Please share it, as it helps you to build social capital and create better relationships and start better conversations with the people you know. And they'll appreciate you for it. You can contact me at rocky@richardsoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped you. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.